Reptilian shapeshifters are behind ISIS, the Federal Reserve and Sesame Street. This is the False Flag Nation podcast.
And welcome back to another episode of False Flag Nation, the podcast where we delve into conspiracy theories, the occult, and all things esoteric. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, William Revere. You there, Will?
Here, loud and clear.
And this is Joe DeMarco. Thanks for joining us, folks. Today we're going to be talking about the biggest story in the nation, possibly the world right now. It's the Iowa Caucuses in the 2016 race for the White House, and this has been a hell of a circus act. It's the U.S. electoral process especially during presidential years, is normally just a festival of insanity. But this is like an episode of Monday Night Raw that has lasted for 9 months, basically. It's just a non-stop idiocy.
Yeah, Donald Trump has been on Monday Night Raw plenty of times, too. That's a great analogy.
Donald Trump is by far the most entertaining candidate I've ever seen in any election. I was a poli-sci major. I kind of followed politics as a kid, but every year I tune in, and this is by far the most entertaining year, and probably the most important year, all entertainment aside, for what it means for the future. But before we get too into that, I know Will wants to bring us up to date with some news and current events. What's going on, Will?
Yeah, I think we ought to hit the Flint, Michigan water crisis.
Yep.
That's something that's obviously in the mainstream news, and as it should be. But a quick summary of what's going on there is that via austerity measures, the government in Michigan switched water sources. And long story short, the water that was going through their processing systems and into the houses was slightly more corrosive. And the water then picked up lead from the processing pipes and also people's home pipes, and sewage systems. So that is essentially what's going on there, and there's basically lead poisoning for all the residents in Flint, Michigan, and it's all because of a decision to save, I think it would have been like a little over $1 million a year in Michigan, which is... Flint, Michigan was part of one of the areas in that state that was basically broke, so they were doing whatever they could to save as much money as possible.
Yeah, that's an area that's been hit pretty hard by industrial outsourcing and whatnot. That is a legendary filmmaker, Michael Moore's hometown.
Yeah,
there, and I believe they switched to Detroit's water supply. Is that what happened? Which, switching to anything supplying the city of Detroit is probably a bad idea, but water, I don't know what they were thinking.
What they did was switch to a river that...
that's it, the Flint River.
Which had all sorts of farm sewage and other industrial waste go streaming right into it, and there was exceptional levels of chlorine in the water as well.
Tasty.
So, long story short, you have contaminated water and poisoned not only children, but they're more susceptible to the lead poisoning, but the elderly. And so what has happened is basically just a real, genuine state of emergency there. And it's kind of hard to picture not being able to go to the faucet for water.
Yeah.
But it kind of brings to light a couple issues. One is that we're all being poisoned by fluoride in the drinking water. That's fact number one. So
Okay.
I also think that, which we can go into that in another episode, but I also think, this could be a false flag / test or pilot episode, if you will, of events to come, to see how a town or a city is going to react to their water being contaminated.
I don't know.
We've talked about this a couple times, but this could be the target of a terrorist attack, target of a internal
water supply.
attack. Yeah, water supply. That's something that is going to affect everybody, and probably more so than just a bomb going off or a mass shooting. That's something I think is more terrifying. So who knows? It's my opinion that in the next couple of years we're going to see some sort of biological attack, and it's probably going to stem from contaminated water or treatment facilities.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can get on board with that, Will. That's pretty. I don't want to say far-fetched, but like I worked on a documentary once where we were filming at a water treatment center, and most of those have quite a lot of security there. I don't think it could be intentionally put. That would be pretty hard to pull off. It's not impossible, but it would be very difficult for an outside entity that was not authorized to be there to do that. I honestly, I think this is just negligence. I don't see a conspiracy here. I think if there's a conspiracy, it's like what you said. It's originally it's just people cutting corners and wanting to save money. It's and the result was this entire town got lead poisoning, and who knows how long this has been going on. I actually, that's probably pretty easy to find out. You can just Google when they switched the water supply. But I will say the water still passes the Homer Simpson test. See him pouring it in those fountains. If it's brown, drink it down. If it's black, send it back.
All I'm saying is that, we've seen it before. We've seen what the government can do. Is it out of the realm of possibility to say that the government could contaminate our own water like they're doing currently? No, I don't think so at all. So, like I said,
the government doing it, I agree that's possible. I thought you were implying that like a terrorist group could do it. Like that would be much more difficult to pull off. But
it would have to be a cooperation in various levels to hit something like that. But I think it's definitely possible.
Well, we will keep following that story. Obviously we hope they find a solution to that, and we hope the people are not too badly affected by it. That's a pretty fucked up situation. It wouldn't be funny or anything if it was happening in your area, and sounds like they're getting a lot of water donated and stuff there. So, one thing I did notice is that the governor has not resigned. I don't think anyone's resigned. They're just like, we'll fix it. Sorry, we fucked up. My bad. Your kids have lead poisoning. My bad, bro. But we'll fix it. Like it's pretty much been the response.
It is funny that you mentioned that you said we would, probably think about it differently if it was affecting us. But, as I've been spending some time in the tri-state area, some of the areas on Long Island have been affected by contamination as well. So there's a couple villages that just this week have issued boiling warnings to their districts.
Are you fucking serious? Boiling your water? What is
yeah.
It's like
21st century.
Living in a UN refugee camp or something. Like, boil your water before you use it. What the fuck?
Exactly.
And I bet you still have to pay your water bill.
No, of course. But yeah, I mean, anything's possible. So we're experiencing some of that now in the New York area. So interesting stuff. And like you said, we're going to be covering this. And hopefully we don't see anything more poisonous happening.
That's
Larger scale attacks.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Well, anyway, moving on. Unless you had other news, we can.
No, why don't I know we want to hit the Iowa Caucus, so why don't you go into that a little bit? I know you had a explanation and you wanted to go into the superdelegates. So,
let's not get ahead of ourselves. Yeah, that's a part of it, but that's like part of the bigger picture dynamic of how this whole thing works. So basically, if you're from outside the United States or you don't understand how the process works in Iowa, the state of Iowa has a process called a caucus where people meet in little groups in like church basements and town halls and stuff in each of the 99 counties in Iowa. And they cast their votes for who they want to be the Republican nominee or the Democratic nominee. Both parties are doing it at the same time. Now, when you participate in a primary or a caucus, what you're really doing is your vote is not being directly counted. What you're really doing is telling a delegate to your party's national convention, which happens in late spring, early summer, how they should vote and what candidate they should pick to represent your party in the general election. So, if Trump comes out on top, or if Ted Cruz comes out on top, or what have you, that means they're saying we want the delegates from Iowa to vote for Trump at the Republican National Convention, or Cruz, or Rand Paul, whoever it is. A lot of people don't understand that. They think you're voting directly for the person you want. Now, of the delegates that are sent from each state, including Iowa, there's about 20% of them that are uncommitted to the person that the people from their state chose. And they're called superdelegates. And they're not obligated to vote the way the people from their state told them. Like, they could be, and some of them are not necessarily from a state. They could be like party elders, people that worked for, like, say, the Democratic, the DNC or the RNC for years, or former politicians, like, for instance, like Jimmy Carter, Nancy Pelosi, and Bill Clinton are all superdelegates for the Democratic Party.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so there's no one at the state level, except for perhaps Pelosi, is telling them how to vote. And even if they were, they don't have to listen. They can make up their minds at the convention. They can change at the last minute. So there's this kind of system where you have these, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. These people can choose who the nominee is, even if the person they chose has fewer votes, by the delegates thus far, they can tip the balance in another candidate's favor. That's actually what happened with Barack Obama and Hillary in the 2008 Democratic primaries.
Okay.
Like, Hillary had more votes via the delegates going in. But the superdelegates decided that Obama had a better chance of winning, so they all sided with Obama over her. And then, even though Hillary had more votes beforehand, they tilted the balance in Obama's favor, and that's how he became the nominee. And as it turns out, their gamble was correct. It paid off. He won.
So these superdelegates, they are open to being persuaded heavily, probably, by outside opinions and probably checkbooks.
Yes, and hypothetically, yes. It's possible, and in all likelihood probable, there's all kinds of backroom deals going on. They could be influenced by, God knows who, banks, companies, whatnot. They could be pressuring or offering campaign contributions to make them vote a certain way. No one's ever going to admit to that.
Right.
because that, I mean, I think that would be off the books, but in some cases, but yeah, you really do have this segment of delegates in each party that can shift the election in a way that the general public doesn't necessarily want it to go in terms of which candidate is picked.
Now, I know that it's not a guarantee win if a candidate wins the Iowa caucus.
No.
Mike Huckabee won, I believe, in 2008, right?
2008, yeah. And then Rick Santorum actually won in 2012,
right?
I believe. So that's, holy shit. But yeah, the Iowa caucus, the reason everyone makes such a big deal of it is that it's generally a good predictor of how the general election will go. It's seen as kind of a microcosm of how the rest of the country will vote. And I think that precedent was set when Jimmy Carter was elected back in 70, whatever that was, 74. But this year, I think there's a very real chance that the superdelegates will exercise their power more so than they have in the past. Because if you look at who's leading in New Hampshire and in Iowa, in Iowa with the Republican Party, Donald Trump, as of today is Saturday, January 30th, as we're recording this. Donald Trump has a 6.6 point lead over Ted Cruz. So we have Donald Trump at 31.4%, and then Ted Cruz at 24.8%. So that's a little bit over the margin of error, which is 4%. And the two of them have been in the lead pretty consistently since December. In November, there was a brief spike where Dr. Ben Carson was in the lead, and Donald Trump was like, that's where he gave his speech. He was like, "What the hell are you people doing to me there?"
Right.
And it's
so what you're saying is that these superdelegates. I think what you're leading up to is that they're going to flex their establishment powers and persuade the election in the favor of either Cruz or Rubio.
Well, I don't think they'd pick Cruz. Cruz is not well liked within the Republican Party. He's known for being very abrasive and confrontational, and takes very unpopular stands on things, and he has not made a lot of friends within his own party, and I think that's part of the reason he's successfully been able to portray himself as an anti-establishment candidate. But if in light of what's going on, the Republican Party, the establishment Republican Party, does not want Trump as their nominee. They are really, I think I'm stating the obvious here. Trump has been upsetting their whole strategy ever since he jumped into the race. The Republican Party's strategy, in light of Obama being elected twice, was we can't beat the Democrats by being different than them. So let's try and beat them by becoming more like the Democrats. And what that has done, at least in my opinion, is it's alienated a lot of their base, which are kind of blue collar voters in the Midwest and the South that have been kind of fucked over by globalization and outsourcing and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And they're not happy about, or they feel threatened by immigration, whether legal or illegal. And the Republican Party, which used to be very tough on illegal immigration, has become a lot softer to it in the last few years. And they always were, really. I mean, they were. They saw them as cheap labor they could exploit, and the Democrats saw them as
voters.
yeah, they pandered to them. They saw them as a permanent voter base. If the demographics keep going in the directions they're going, there'll be a large Latino population they can always count on to support them in any election. So they're playing the long game that way. So neither party was really going to do anything about it until Trump made an issue out of it, and it's like there was this feeling that he's saying what a lot of people have been thinking but were afraid to say because that it would cost them their jobs if they're a politician or
right.
wasn't politically correct or anything. So he's kind of harnessed a lot of that anger that these people I mentioned before, the old Republican base, has, that feels like they were kind of betrayed by their own party. So, but that doesn't seem to fit the long-term strategy whoever the elders running the Republican Party have. So he's the anti-establishment candidate on that side. And on the Democrat side, you have Bernie Sanders, who's gaining a lot of momentum, and he is almost caught up to Clinton in Iowa. He's like 3 points behind Hillary,
right?
Which is still within the margin of error. It could very much swing in his direction, and he's way ahead in New Hampshire. I mean, he's like 15 points ahead of Hillary right now, which is enormous. As he's basically guaranteed to get New Hampshire. But Trump is ahead in New Hampshire as well. So,
but you have on both sides this kind of anti-establishment candidate.
Yeah.
And you have Donald Trump on the Republican side and Bernie Sanders on the Democrat side. And in recent days with the investigation in Benghazi and stuff, that's bound to have an effect on the Hillary campaign as well. And it's going to be interesting to see if Democrats are going to continue to support the establishment in Hillary Clinton, or if they're going to side with a way more radical, essentially Marxist candidate like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, it's what's interesting is that I was getting ahead of myself there. I was going to talk about Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. The thing that's interesting is they actually agree on a handful of things. Like they're both opposed to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They're both they're sort of economic nationalists in that way. I mean, I don't think Bernie Sanders would be happy using that term, but I guess protectionist would be a more term he'd be favorable to. They both want to bring like manufacturing and stuff back to the States. They want to discourage the shipping jobs away and whatnot. Bernie Sanders is obviously a lot more pro-union than Donald Trump, but they're both kind of opposed to this what a lot of the global elite and the upper echelons of American society have been doing, which is their wealth has been increasing based on policies that have been made, and the rest of the countries has been going down, and they're both capitalizing on the anger in reaction to that. But it's just interesting to see this unfolding because both parties, like you can see the leadership of both parties kind of like holy shit, because it's not, things are not going according to plan.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think that clearly the establishment, the hierarchy in the United States government favors someone like I even think a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, but they also would have the same power over a Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, well,
but you don't have power. You don't have the power over Bernie Sanders because, as much as I don't agree with him, I don't think he will be bought and paid for in the same way that a Clinton would be.
No. Well, see, this is what a lot of people don't understand about Hillary Clinton, is that Hillary Clinton is basically a neocon. Like, she voted for the Iraq War. She is basically part of that establishment, but she's just a Democrat. If you look at like how people vote and what they, in terms of foreign policy, she would be, George W. Bush Part 2.
Exactly.
I guarantee you.
As is Obama.
Yeah. The reason I would be concerned if Hillary won the general election is that I really think that she would miscalculate some situation with Russia or China and start World War III, because that's just how she is. Reptilian overlords in the deep state establishment would very much prefer to have someone like a Marco Rubio or a Hillary Clinton in the White House, because that's pretty much the usual Coke versus Pepsi choice the American people are given. It's going to be more or less more of the same. They can predict how someone like that is going to act. They can influence them in a way that they are predictable, they're comfortable with, and it's their agenda will proceed as according to plan. That's not going to happen if Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump wins.
Right, and mainly because Bernie Sanders, as much as I don't like him, he seems to be genuine in his thought process that, we should be shifting into more of a socialist agenda. But I don't see him in the Vatican basement eating Native American babies that were stolen from false adoptions brought over from Canada, from the Swiss Guard. Just don't see it. I don't see Donald Trump either. I don't think he would care for Native American babies. I think he's probably more of a white Anglo-Saxon baby eater. But
prefers wasp babies.
Exactly. But
all right. Okay.
What I'm saying is, it'll be very interesting to see how the Washington elite and the New World Order responds to someone they don't have this control over, this mind control.
Well, I mean, as I've been implying, I think there's a very real chance this could happen is when it comes time for the Democratic National Convention and the Republican Convention, the superdelegates could intervene and pick someone that the public doesn't want. They could pick Marco Rubio instead. They could pick Ted Cruz. I don't know. That a lot of very powerful people just don't like him, though. And Ted Cruz is kind of seen by Trump supporters as the next best thing.
I would agree with that.
So honestly, I think they might pick Cruz. The Democratic Party, obviously, the superdelegates would intervene on Hillary's behalf.
Right.
But I think if they did that, there's a very real chance you'd see social unrest, possibly riots and stuff. I think a lot of people have just had enough. They think the whole system's corrupt, and I don't want to say we're quite at a French Revolution type scenario, but if something like that happens, who knows?
It might be a little refreshing, don't you think?
It could be. Could be. Bring out the Congressional Caucus guillotine. There, put it up on the stage there.
I think honestly, I'll just give my predictions. I think that in the upcoming months, we're going to see Hillary Clinton surpass Bernie Sanders and really kind of stomp him out, and Hillary will become the Democratic choice, and I feel that Ted Cruz will be the Republican choice, and Donald Trump will fizzle and die out, and we're going to have two very friendly to the establishment candidates. So the New World Order will kind of just, look down and be happy with the two selections that they have.
Rub their clawed hands together.
That's what I think is going to happen.
I disagree. I think if like I said, if Hillary becomes the nominee, it's going to be because the superdelegates intervened on her behalf. This Benghazi thing is not going away. No matter how much she tries to ignore it, it's not going away. And there's a lot of people that they just do not trust her. Like even within her own party, they just see her as just having this lust for power and will just say and do whatever is necessary to get there. And then once you're in office, just do everything. I mean, there's a lot of anger towards, this expression's almost becoming a cliche, that the Washington establishment. She personifies the Washington establishment. I mean, she's a Clinton. Sure, like her campaign has been based on brand recognition, and it's backfiring. So, I mean, she's way behind in New Hampshire. That's not a good sign. I disagree that she's going to pull ahead between now and the convention. If she's the nominee, it's because the superdelegates intervene to help her. Trump, that's harder to say. I think there's a very real chance Trump could be the nominee. The superdelegates could intervene against him and pick someone else. It's possible, it's something. You see something like the Bradley effect, where I don't remember the guy's name. This black guy in California, I guess, who was running for governor. I think I'm probably butchering this, but long story short, he was running for office and he was winning, and everyone thought he was going to win. He was a done deal, and then the poll results came back and he lost. So there was this theory that a lot of people, they wanted to support this black guy, but they just couldn't make themselves do it when the moment of truth came, and they voted for someone else. So it was this argument for this phenomenon called the Bradley effect was used for many years by people who wanted to point out there's a lot of latent racism in elections. Now, you could see a phenomenon similar to that, where when the moment of truth comes to vote for Trump, a lot of people, some people, may not be able to make themselves do it. They'll get cold feet and they'll pull the lever for someone else, or they'll circle someone else's name. So that's possible too. I don't know. We'll find out tomorrow. Honestly, at this point, I think I'm going to predict Trump's going to take Iowa. I really think at this point he's got a outside the margin of error lead over the next person, Cruz. I think he's going to take Iowa, and I think Democrats. That's a toss-up. It's a toss-up. I'd kind of like to see Bernie Sanders take it. I just because I really think both that party needs to be shaken up. I really think the Democratic Party could have done better than Hillary Clinton for their darling child this year.
Do you this is an interesting segue, but do you think that the DNC is preparing for the FBI to indict Hillary, and that's why they're introducing the possibility of Michael Bloomberg into the scene?
Well, I'm not. Yeah. I think Bloomberg's just kind of thinking that on his own. I think the DNC is on Hillary's side, personally. That's why I think they're scheduling all these debates for like Saturday night when no one's home.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
This chairwoman, whatever her name was, I can't remember. She's clearly, pulling for Hillary. She schedules these debates for time slots when no one gives a shit. Everyone's Saturday night at 9:00, and no, people are not watching a debate on Saturday night at 9. Yeah. Okay, they're just not. And whereas the Republican debates were all weeknights when people are going to stay up and watch this, and they can talk about it the next day at work. I think, Bloomberg said he's going to win. He would run if Hillary is not the nominee. So I guess he would be like, for at least some people, the elders, the shapeshifters in the Democratic Party, he would be the insurance policy against a Sanders presidency.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the reasons why I can guarantee you Bernie Sanders will not win is because, and I support this in some ways, is that he said he will go after the banking cartels. And those are fighting words in American politics, considering that most campaign funds are generated from big banks.
You don't fuck with Goldman Sachs.
Exactly.
Goldman Sachs gets what Goldman Sachs wants every election cycle.
Right.
What was it? It was either them or Citibank. They gave like the same amount of money to both the Mitt Romney and Barack Obama in the 2012 election. So they're just hedging their bets so they have influence over,
right,
regardless of who wins.
But that's very telling of the nature of American politics there. So, like I said, when you're dealing with the big banks, you're dealing with the deep state, and you're dealing with powers that are unbelievably awe-inspiring.
Yeah,
totally out of the realm of our even ability to think. These are reptilians. These are shapeshifters. These are possibly extraterrestrials controlling our world, and we're just the pawns.
There's a time when I would have dismissed that, but each election cycle. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. I had a pop-up ad on Real Clear Politics.
Pornhub, yeah.
God damn it! Sorry,
yeah.
So sorry that she-mail...
RedTube.
Sorry, that she-mail brony film I was watching earlier started playing again. My apologies, that's very unprofessional. But, Twinkle Fist! But... I don't know, what are they called? Rainbow Dash, or whatever their fucking names?
I don't know.
What was I saying?
I don't know.
I lost my train of thought. I think that's something that, talking about the undue influence banks have over elections, I think that's something that's hurt Ted Cruz a lot over the last few weeks, because it came out that he took out this $1 million loan to fund his campaign from Goldman Sachs, and then he had not disclosed that early on, even though he was supposed to, and he had some justification for it. But it also is the case that his wife works for Goldman Sachs, so he has that connection. Even if they hadn't given him that money, there's that just that interpersonal influence they have over him.
The problem there is, and this is a miscommunication between the mainstream media and what actually happened. And I don't know if you're aware of this though, but and I don't defend Ted Cruz. I think he's a douchebag. But that $1 million was a loan from his personal investments, which was handled by Goldman Sachs. So in reality, he did nothing wrong.
So this would be like with
dipping into your IRA.
Okay.
Right. But what makes it fishy is, like you said, his wife does or had worked for Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
So, in the grand scheme of things, somebody taking money out of his personal accounts just because it's Goldman Sachs doesn't make it wrong.
I get what you're saying, yeah, but I think it's just there's such a negative influence in people's minds. I think that's kind of what pushed things back towards Trump's favor.
I agree.
Pat, it's one of those things like it's like if you're a college professor accused of sexual assault, just to even be accused, you've already lost, and like to even be accused of taking that loan from Goldman Sachs has tarnished his campaign.
I agree with that completely.
Like that, but what are your predictions for tomorrow? I called it for Trump and Bernie Sanders. I'm going to take a bit more of a risk there. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
I think we're going to see Hillary and Trump, definitely. But I do not think that Trump will make it much further past Iowa. I think that he will fizzle, and I think Ted Cruz will be the Republican candidate.
I don't know what you're basing that on. It's just he's
Well, I think
he's got so much momentum, and he's almost certainly going to take New Hampshire, barring any kind of major change in the polls. I mean, he's got like a 15-point lead there.
People are going to get cold feet, and they're going to, he's got a big mouth, but he doesn't really have much to back up with. And I think people are going to realize that do you want someone like Donald Trump negotiating stuff with Putin?
Well, apparently him and Putin would get along nice, according to both of them. So
I think it's a little bit of bullshit, but
I think the media likes to portray Putin as this boogeyman because that's part of the agenda that they're told to illustrate for the people. I think there's definitely a strong anti-Russia slant in the Western media that is not giving an honest picture of what's going on in places like Ukraine and Syria.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more about the other candidates. Like one person I would have liked to see a better performance from in this campaign is Rand Paul.
Definitely.
I think like you, at heart, I am a libertarian. I think the most important right we have is the right to be left alone by the government. And, his father, Ron Paul, was all about that. And I think most people can agree that Ron Paul was an honest person who truly believed in what he was saying and doing, whether you agreed with him or not. And I think a lot of people had those same hopes for Rand, but Rand has not caught that same momentum, even in spite of that filibuster he did against the renewal of the
Patriot Act.
Yeah, the new version of the Patriot Act, which was, I watched the live stream of that. That guy really believes in what he's saying too, but he has not caught that momentum he needed.
I think that Ron Paul kind of had the same energy as Bernie Sanders, in that, whether you agree with him or not, that he's speaking what he believes to be the truth, and he's genuine. And I think that Rand doesn't exactly have what his father had, and Ron Paul also had a diehard libertarian following.
Yeah.
And like we've discussed before, I don't know if the diehard libertarians trust Rand the way they did his father, Ron.
Yeah,
which I think is sad because, this is American politics. You're not going to get exactly what you want. And Gary Johnson is not going to win. But Rand Paul has at least a splinter of hope, so why not shoot your vote that way?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, a lot of people felt like Rand was more willing to compromise than his father was. Like, I think he was endorsing was it Mitt Romney in the 2012 race? So a lot of people were not happy about that in the libertarian camp, and I think a lot of the people that were part of the whole Ron Paul revolution movement 4 years ago, they sided with Trump just out of a feeling of anger and betrayal and whatnot. So a lot of the people that Rand Paul was counting on to support him, and I frankly think he just assumed he had their support in the bag. A lot of them, to his surprise, went to Trump's camp. And I think that's part of the reason Trump has gotten under his skin so much in the course of this race. You can see, like, Rand gets visibly angry at times talking about Trump. And I think there's a sense of indignation that Rand feels like Trump stole what was rightfully his, all the support of those people.
See, I disagree because I totally disagree. Anybody who supports Donald Trump is not a libertarian. Anybody who even entertains the possibility of him being president is not a libertarian.
I disagree with that. I think a lot of people just they're desperate for anyone who will shake things up and is not part of the Washington establishment, and that's certainly how people in the 2012 movement with Ron Paul felt, and I think a lot of them defected from the Paul camp to the Trump camp.
Maybe a bunch of morons did, but Donald Trump is a huge supporter of the surveillance state, which is one of the principles of libertarianism.
That is something that disappointed me about Donald Trump when I heard in some of the earlier debates, not the most recent one that he didn't show up to, but when he was talking about Edward Snowden and whatnot, it was disappointing to hear that from Donald Trump, and I expected to hear it from like the Chris Christies and the Marco Rubios, but not so much from him, because Trump isn't, because of his money, isn't beholden to anyone. He doesn't have to say anything he doesn't want to. But he said that because he wanted to, because he believes it. So and as a supporter of what Snowden did, I wasn't happy to hear that.
Right.
But I don't know. It's gonna be a shit show. That's the only thing that's certain at this stage in the race, is that it's gonna be an absolute shit show for the next few months. You can see the global elites panicking in full emergency mode right now. At the World Economic Forum earlier this week, George Soros was like, Donald Trump is doing the work of ISIS, which he's probably not that worried. I might be exaggerating, considering he owns a company that manufactures voting machines. I'm sure he can wave his magic wand and swing the presidency the way he wants to. But the other thing that has not been talked about yet is the Sheldon Adelson sweepstakes. I don't know. Do you know who that is?
No, I don't. Why don't you go into that?
He is a very, very wealthy casino tycoon out in Nevada, who's a radical Zionist and supports, makes major contributions through super PACs to basically whichever campaign promises to most
support Israel.
Offers to the most unconditional and enthusiastic support to Israel. Whoever kowtows to Tel Aviv the most will win the Sheldon Adelson sweepstakes and get like $1 billion or a couple $100 million added to their campaign. So that's and that's something that's not really talked about, but it's started to leak out a little bit more this past few years. And again, that's where having someone like Donald Trump in the race makes things more interesting, is because he doesn't need that guy's money, and neither does what the fuck? What am I saying? Bloomberg, for that instance. I mean, he's probably already supportive of Israel, Bloomberg, but again, he has way more money than Trump does.
Right.
So it's. There's a lot of things that could play out between now and the national conventions.
Yeah, I think that Donald Trump is certainly wealthy, but in the grand scheme of when you're talking Donald Trump and the Rothschilds, it's like junior high in the varsity team.
Yeah.
So
we've said this before. Like, if I really don't think Donald Trump is part of the global the global elite poker club. If he walked into a Bilderberg meeting, I think everyone would be like, "Who's this guy?"
Right.
Exactly. Like he is. I mean, he's got a couple $1 billion, but he is not in the same league as the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the Merovingians,
Vanderbilt.
the various families of the black nobility who are plotting to send us all back to serfdom. But yes, That's what's going to happen. Barring any kind of black swan event, we are headed for, within a couple decades, we'll be ruled by these transhuman pervert nobility like Baron Vladimir Harkonnen in the book Dune, who yes, have little child harems and eunuch manservants, and we'll be bowing 5 times a day towards the Bank of England, praying for redemption from our eternal debt. But
yes,
that's
born of original debt.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But that's my take on this. I ended on a tangent there. Do you have any more?
Because look, it all points in that direction. I mean, everything that we talk to about, be it local politics, U.S. politics, banking cartels, genetically modified food. Those are just a small chapter in the book of the New World Order. Yes. And, it's all pointing in one direction. And, we have to sometimes address that. So everything's connected. That's what I'm going to leave on a note. Yeah, everything is connected.
The anatomy of the deep state tyranny is a large Venn diagram of banks and defense contractors and people who fund campaigns. So hopefully that does not play out. Hopefully there's some the wild cards are able to pull through, and something's got to shake it up the status quo, because what's working now isn't working at all.
I agree with that, and at least on my end, William Revere will be officially endorsing Rand Paul. So I will leave on that note, and we're looking forward to hearing what the listeners have to say.
Very well. Yeah, don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. That helps us because it makes our ratings go up, and it helps you because you get our episodes downloaded automatically every Wednesday. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube and Twitter at False Flag Nation, and our Facebook podcast. And lastly, check out our official website. It's www.falseflagnation.com. This is Joe DeMarco signing off for this weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
All right, take care, folks.